This is Josh here from InsideWrestlingTruth, and today's guest is Lennox Norris. Lennox, how you doing today?
I'm doing quite well. How about yourself?
Doing really good. Glad to have you here on the show.
Thanks for having me.
First question I have for you is, how did you get into the business?
Well, I was a lifelong fan, and with my being from Arkansas, I was partial to Bill Watts' Mid-South / UWF territory. So when I was going to college in Pine Bluff, after attending a show near the Memphis area in Tunica, Mississippi, I caught the wrestling bug, and I was asking them how can I get in it, and they gave me their number to the Memphis territory, and I called, didn't get an answer. So from there, I just what I did, I started researching on the computer for various schools about the country, and I stumbled on one in Columbus where I was going to go that summer anyway, and saw that the cost was going to be a total of $1,250, which is bargain basement compared to some of the more reputable schools around the wrestling world. So I jumped up on that, and 2 weeks after moving to Columbus, got my free tryout with Wild Bull Miller, the trainer at the time, who was a mid-carder in Georgia Championship Wrestling, and worked for Dick the Bruiser for a little bit, and the rest is history.
What guys did you follow growing up?
Growing up, once again, Mid-South territory, Junkyard Dog was the Hulk Hogan of that area. Literally, he was over huge, and all the people of color loved him.
Yeah.
And someone else I followed growing up was Shawn Michaels. I followed his whole career. He actually started in Mid-South before he even wrestled a match in Texas. And who else? Let's see, there was a couple other guys. Hogan, before he gained steam, when he was in the AWA, I followed him a little bit. And then also Ted DiBiase. I like Ted DiBiase. He was actually who Triple H reminded me of when he first got his push in '99 with WWE, when he first started winning the WWE Championship. It reminded me of Ted DiBiase before the $1 Million Man.
Yeah.
And Ric Flair when he first started wrestling for WTBS.
What has been your favorite company to work for?
My favorite company, that's a toss-up. It's been a toss-up between D1W and which is in Charlestown, Indiana, and Pro Wrestling Freedom, which is in Corbin, Kentucky, and that's for two different reasons. D1W, I've been partial to them because when I left Ohio Valley, they took me in immediately. I reconnected with Rick, who I've known for a couple years before that, and they've treated me well ever since. And Pro Wrestling Freedom, I like them because I love their professionalism. I love the way they run. It's so professional the way they run their promotion. It's actually ideal of what any indie should be able to be ran.
How was your time in OVW? And explain your thoughts on Trailer Park Trash.
Well, when I got to OVW in 05, it was still with WWE at the time, and it was it was night and day from what it is now. And the fans, it was like that old school heat, and it took me aback. And Paul Heyman, he's every bit the genius that people make him out to be. And I saw why, the way he put, and I see why people drink his Kool-Aid, because he's so encouraging. Like, even when he critiques your matches or what you do in the ring or what your character is,
right,
he's more encouraging. He doesn't seem to yell at you, which is what some people actually do need that, but he doesn't do that. He's encouraging even when he's critiquing you, because he'll tell you what you need to do to make it better. He won't tell you so much your mistake. he'll emphasize what you need to do better. And about Trailer Park Trash, I'll just say that I don't exactly care for the guy. That's all my thoughts are on that.
That's cool. What titles have you held in your career?
Well, I'm gonna go from most recent to the least recent. So I'm gonna take this backwards. Most recently, the D1W Championship, which I held until last Friday, when I lost to Tracy Smothers. The MAW Championship, which I never lost, which is up in Cleveland, Ohio area. Excuse me. And I won 3 tag team titles in 1 year in 2008 with Ben Woods. Good partner, cool guy to me. Sometimes, of course he wasn't perfect, but anyway, NWA Southern Tag Team titles with him, the Southern All-Star Wrestling Tag Team titles, and I won the USWF Tag Team titles with him.
What guys do you have no use for in the indies, if any?
I can't really say I don't have any use for anybody in the indies. I get along with pretty much everybody. There's, a few people that I might not really care for too much, but mostly I get along with everybody.
What's been your favorite match that you've been in?
My favorite match was well, I have to put this in plural form. My favorite matches have been with Isaiah. We've been on the cards, we were the undercard, and we stolen the show every time. So those are my favorite matches with him. We've had great chemistry together. It's hard to describe, but those are my favorite matches.
What indie guys would you like to work with that you haven't?
Some of them aren't even in the indies anymore, but the ones currently, I would love to wrestle. One in particular I would love to wrestle is Jay Lethal. That's one guy I like to wrestle in particular.
What's the worst promoter you have worked for and why?
Woo. Even though this is a touchy one here, I'm gonna go ahead and say Norm Connors was one of the worst ones. His show was put together. This is in Pittsburgh, PA. His shows were put together, and I'm not gonna base this based on my experience with him. This is based on a lot of other wrestlers' experience with him, and that's his pay. He's been known to gyp guys for a long time, and one in particular was Dusty Rhodes, and I was on the same show as him, and he was one of the guys that was shorted on pay, which that surprised surprised me, but because he gypped me a little bit, but I was green, I was younger, so it didn't really affect me so much. Whereas with Dusty, this is his living, this is what he does. He's not going to work in the morning and then having to come out to Pennsylvania from Texas or Georgia, wherever he's living at, straight from his job to go wrestle. So.
I'm gonna name off some guys, and I just want you to tell me what you think about them. Okay.
All right.
The first one is Isaiah.
Isaiah, great guy. I know he's a little bit different to a lot of people. He can be radical, he can have a temper, but to me, overall, nice guy and hell of an athlete.
About Vader.
Vader, polarizing to me. He he treated me well personally, but to a lot of people, I heard he was an ass.
Nick Dinsmore.
Dinsmore, great teacher.
Madman Pondo.
Madman Pondo, awesome dude.
Simon Seth.
I worry about him so much. Hopefully, hopefully, things are gonna be okay with him. Sometimes, he's not perfect. There's a lot of things that he does that are kind of like, heavy. It's a head scratcher with him sometimes, but overall nice guy, hell of an athlete.
Tracy Smothers.
Dad. Pops. That's what a lot of us even call him in the dressing room. Nicest guy to have never really made it to the highest level of the wrestling business.
Jimmy Felcher.
Unique young man. He's a unique cat. Well, I love him to death. He's a cool cat.
What do you think of TNA and WWE currently?
TNA, gosh, am I rooting for him? I've been rooting for him since the beginning because without competition, then the wrestling business, it'll fail. It'll be worse than what people think it is now. And with TNA, they just need to find a specific direction, long-term direction, and hopefully can stick with it. And that's what I was hoping Hogan and Bischoff could do. But it doesn't seem to have, worked out for them as well. But they're trying, and I'm rooting for them personally. And WWE, they're despite what people say about them, despite what I would sometimes think about them, these shows aren't perfect. They're both promotions are trying. If you try to run those promotions, try to run corporate wrestling, see how it runs, goes for you. And they're both trying, man. And hopefully, the business experience another boom, which is, that's the problem. There's the only real problem with any of those promotions is that they're trying to find that one star that can, make the business go boom again. And I think it just has to come. That's what happened in the 90s last time. It just came. It didn't. There was a lot of little things that came together. I think personally, both promotions are trying too hard.
Who's one guy from the WWE you would like to work with?
The ultimate would be I'd like to work John Cena.
Really?
I actually would like to work him. I know they put him over huge here in OVW, but and a lot of people criticize his work. But I want to see for myself. There's nothing like seeing, someone's work for yourself firsthand. Yeah. So that's why I like to experience that for myself.
Why should someone come out and see a Lennox Norris match?
Well, that's an easy question to answer. The reason why the fans should come see Lennox Norris in the ring is because I bring it from the time I come out the curtain to the time I go back in the curtain. And my matches are realistic. I work to make them as realistic as possible. And I work, my hardest to portray the emotion that, that is required to make a match, ideally what it's supposed to be, a great match and one that that can give the fans their money's worth, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Is there a lot of racism in wrestling, or is that just a myth?
It's not just a myth. There's the truth of it all is there's some, but just like in life, this is what I've learned from experience. If you're if you're in competition mode with somebody, then that's when all the racism will come out. And that's not even with different races. This is within the same race. Like if if I'm Irish and you're Polish, and I'm in competition with you, I'm getting too competitive with you, and which wrestling is competitive in a different way than a lot of the other sports. And if I'm competitive with you, that's when all the racism comes out.
What's your favorite style of match and why?
That's a hard one to answer because I've done different styles of matches because I've wrestled in different areas. My favorite has been the Southern style of match. One is easier. 2, it shows more of your personality, which actually brings about a long-term, reaction from the crowd, as opposed to, the fast-paced, spot fest style that you would see up north.
What do you think about hardcore wrestling?
Hardcore wrestling is to me, it's also a kind of a short-term thing. It's not really. It's kind of short as far as the history of the wrestling business is concerned. I don't really to me, hardcore wrestling. I don't like people doing hardcore for the sake of having hardcore. I would much rather you build it up. And that's what they used to do in the older days. That's where it came from. Hardcore wrestling would be guys would have an issue. They'd have a regular match. It would be inconclusive. They would have a series of other matches, and it would build up to where then they couldn't settle it except for they'd have to go no holds barred. And that's what hardcore matches came from.
All right, the next question I have is one I ask everybody. What do you feel is the biggest problem with the indies?
The biggest problem, I believe, is the lack of. Sometimes there's too much drama in the indies. There's a lot of, it's no secret that the wrestling locker rooms are, can be kind of like a high school, girls' locker room. And there's a lot of gossip involved in it, even no matter what level you're at. But the problem is that it's kept people from working together, and that's what the goal of professional wrestling is supposed to be, for everybody to work together collectively to make the show one that could be the most entertaining to the fans.
Yeah. What was it like before your first match?
I was nervous, and I thought about the people I used to watch when I was a kid, and then I thought about what I wanted to do as far as how I wanted to make a mark in the wrestling business, and I was thinking, am I gonna remember all these spots?
Is there any people you feel have tried to hold back your career in wrestling?
Yeah, I mean, whether it's true or not, that's debatable. But I felt like there were people that were trying to hold me back, and this was the last part of my time in OVW. I felt like at times I would go elsewhere around the indie scene, and I would get pushed 2 hours away. But then I'd come back to OVW, which was supposed to be my home, and I get treated like a stepchild in my own home. I'm like, this is backwards. So it might not be true, and most likely, of course, that'd be disputed. But that's just how I felt, and that's one thing I've learned: how you feel is never wrong.
How do you feel about women wrestling?
Well, actually, I liked it. I respect women athletes of every sport. So when I watched women's wrestling, it was different to me. So I liked it. I always liked things that were different. That's what drew me to the wrestling in the first place. So I love women's wrestling. I like women athletes.
Who are your favorite 5 people in the business that don't wrestle?
Rick Brady, John Bullard. A couple of Wild Bill Miller still wrestles, so not him. Let's see. Billy the P is one of them. And who else? Paul Heyman and Christian Muscagni.
If you weren't in wrestling, what would you be doing?
Well, I'd be doing I would have graduated college, and I would have been doing a regular job. Probably would try to try my hand at corporate America. Probably would have tried to do that.
How did the name the Bronze God come about?
Oh, this is an easy one. there was a guy, an indie guy that I traveled with named Cage Cutler, and he suggested to me when we were on the way to Nashville that hey man, you should call yourself the Bronze God. And I was like, what? The Bronze God? He was like, yeah, dude. I mean, you're all jacked up. You know, you're brown skin. You should call yourself the Bronze God. And I'm like, I thought about it for a couple weeks off and on. I'm like, you know what? It kind of clicked. And I tried it one night before I started using the capes because I didn't have the money to get any at the time. So I tried it out, did my pose, and it was off to the races from there.
What was running through your mind last Friday night when Tracy Smothers was dancing in the ring?
It brought back old memories of ECW when I used to watch him as one of the full-blooded Italians.
Yeah.
When I remember Joey Styles made a joke about him and Tommy Rich, saying that they couldn't find Italy on a map.
Yeah.
And maybe that was true, but I thought about that line when I saw him dancing.
Well, Lennox, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Is there any last words or anything you want to say to the fans, to your fans?
To my fans, and I know they're out there, I love you all, and I'm very appreciative that you followed me for however many years you have, whatever time frame you have, and I'm glad that there's some fans that I didn't even think I had overseas, and I definitely appreciate you following my career, and I assure you that there's more that came from. There's more that I have in store. So watch for me. I plan on making my mark in the wrestling business. I bet on it. I plan on it. So you bet on it. I guarantee it. I'm going to make my mark in the wrestling business, and you heard it here first.
Lennox, thanks again, man.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.